Hello, everyone, and welcome to Reflections with Baba Yusuf. I am your host, Mallam Baba Yusuf. Today, I will reflect on the debilitating state of political and socio-economic affairs in northern Nigeria, despite producing the highest number of presidents and heads of state of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, as I pose a question as follows. Dear northern Nigeria, who will save us from ourselves? For the record, I am a northerner, a progressive, and a patriotic citizen of Nigeria. What some of us have been speaking to in the last 25 years since the beginning of the Fourth Republic in Nigeria is that if we are to remain as one nation, then the unity of Nigeria should be paramount and should be addressed properly. The brutal socio-economic situation in Nigeria must be reversed immediately. That is why I wish to draw the attention of Nigerians, especially northerners, to the alignment of some pressure groups that are currently coming together in northern Nigeria, apparently in anticipation of the 2027 elections. Let me remind us that some of those northern politicians are the same people that during the build-up to the 2023 presidential elections gave justifications that the southern part of Nigeria should produce the president, since the northern part of Nigeria had enjoyed 8 years of presidency under President Muhammad Buhari. Interestingly, during the tenure of President Buhari, some of those politicians were governors, legislators, political party leaders, etc. The question is, what did they do during their own tenures, and how come some of them that were at the forefront of the campaign for President Bola Tinubu and ensured his success started working against his administration less than 1 year in office, obviously simply because they were not getting what they expected? I would have taken them more seriously if their intentions were genuine and consistent, which obviously is not the case. At this crucial moment in the history of Nigeria, when the country is highly polarized along ethnic, tribal, and religious sentiments, I was taken aback to see the sublime positions of some political leaders. Look, I don't have any qualms with having national discussions with the elites coming together to see how we can pressure any government, I repeat, any government in power that fails to deliver its mandate. Because as far as I'm concerned, political parties in Nigeria are the same actors in different costumes. Therefore, in my opinion, the cyclical and abysmal failure of the political class of this country is not about a political party. I am only keen to see political leaders coming together to speak with a view to ensuring that we put governments on their toes, whether it is the APC at national or other parties at the subnational levels. I do not subscribe to regionalizing the political conversations at this point in time simply because some politicians have not gotten what they wanted or expected in the current administration of President Tinubu that some of them supported to enthrone. After all, some of those politicians are the same people that went as far as insulting our northern elders, which included my parents and your own parents, in their efforts to convince Nigerians that President Tinubu is the right person to lead Nigeria, only for them to do an about face with tongue in cheek to shamelessly start going around to greet the same elders that they were insulting and to indicate that the government they vehemently supported into power is not a good government. The self-serving gaslighting tactics by politicians should no longer be supported by citizens, especially northerners. In fact, I guarantee that some of the same politicians will have no qualms doing an about face to tell us that we should endure the Tinubu administration even though they were condemning the government a day before, so long as they get what they want. That is what happens even at the state levels. Our positions as citizens should be based on realities and what we want, not what these selfish politicians tell us. This type of self centered politicking that is promoted by most of our northern political leaders should be discountenanced by northerners. Indeed, I rather take seriously and respectfully the contributions of political leaders who have been consistent in their positions, because those politicians can be considered more focused and genuine than these latter day prophets. So we should stop being gullible and start looking through these politicians whose only interests are not for the people, but only for themselves, their families, and their friends. The longer we continue remaining gullible and playing into the hands of ethnic and tribal jingoism, the longer it will take us to get out of the current debilitating socio-economic malaise in Nigeria. After all, hunger, diseases, poverty, insecurity, etc., do not select tribes, ethnicity, religion, or region. We should be able to see through them, those politicians, and going forward, decide for ourselves who we should elect at national and subnational levels, because the bottom line is that these politicians don't care about us. And as such, we should no longer put our destiny in their selfish hands. Let me remind us that out of over 130 million multidimensionally poor Nigerians, according to the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, 70% are from core north. By the way, this horrible poverty index was majorly achieved during the 8 years of President Buhari's tenure. It is also worthy of note that President Buhari was supported by a lot of northern political leaders who he gave leadership positions, and also elected governors and legislators who mostly failed woefully to deliver their mandates, but rather left their states worse than they met them, in abject poverty, heightened insecurity, and perpetual indebtedness. What a shame. I dare say that we should no longer listen to such leaders and or take them as our torch bearers, because they keep leading us into the abyss of darkness and backwardness. They have betrayed our trust and confidence, not once, but many times over. If we continue to follow such leaders gullibly, then we should have ourselves to blame for continuous suffering. Moreover, I'm yet to see anything grand about the ongoing political grandstanding by some northern political leaders under the guise of moves to save the North or move to save Nigeria, whereas they have been part of the political process, structure, and establishment of Nigeria for over 50 years. The northern politicians do not have monopoly of the aforementioned distasteful political credentials, by the way. Politicians from all geopolitical regions in Nigeria also hold the same awful credentials. Albeit as a northerner, my focus of discussion today is on the politicians from northern Nigeria. Given that since after the glorious time of the likes of late Sir Ahmadu Bello, Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, Mallam Aminu Kano, Mallam Sa'ad Zungur, Chief Joseph Tarka, Chief Sunday Aweni, to mention but a few. Unfortunately, most of the current political leaders have woefully failed to deliver their mandates. Having enjoyed the privileges of good leadership and good governance when they were growing up at that time, in the good old days, they have betrayed all the values that trained them. Most of these politicians came from humble backgrounds, and yet they were given equal opportunities and level playing fields, which they have shamelessly now cornered for themselves and their cohorts, while their people wallow in abject poverty and strife as they sheepishly go around, with wicked, narcissistic aloofness and sense of entitlement, except for a few of them. The bottom line is that there is an increasing number of citizens who are now seeing through these politicians and their allies, that for them it is all about leveraging the levers of politics and power, which are divisiveness, ethnicity, tribal and religious sentiments, to achieve their parochial interests. The hypocrisy and total lack of strategy or empathy of most of our politicians is sickening. It is time to call out these northern leaders for what they are: pathologically selfish, period. They have no intelligent or coherent plan for the people. Their political interests are only for themselves and their children. Majority of northern politicians have successfully ensured that they have killed what remained of the education structure and systems built by the vanguards of our liberation from colonialism. Knowing that education is the bedrock of any society and developing, of any sustainable and developing society, it is a shame that we have destroyed, or they have destroyed, what they benefited from. Absolutely. With an appalling level of illiteracy, with no clear plan to help us exit this situation apart from photo shoots and mantras, I wonder how the North will make any significant progress without education. The state of insecurity in Nigeria is worsening, increasing infant maternal mortality and increasing multidimensional poverty indices. I can go on and on. Things are so bad that currently in northern Nigeria, some human beings have begun to eat grass and compete with animals for the food that hitherto was solely for animals. What a tragedy. Dear northern Nigerians, where are the visions? Or what is the vision for the collective good? What are the priorities? What are the values? Importantly, as northern Nigerians, we have not helped ourselves due to our wanton laziness, sense of entitlement, and misplaced priorities. Therefore, 2027 should be about values, strategy, clear vision, demonstrable capacity, and integrity, which as citizens we must follow toe-to-toe with consistently constructive demand for good governance from our leaders at local government, state, and presidential level. What is even more worrisome is how some of the so-called quote-unquote new breed northern politicians, the young guns that are already inflicted and sucked in by the horrible hydra-headed monsters of corruption and self-serving style of our political leaders. Accordingly, I urge us that going forward, it is no longer enough for politicians to convince us to elect or even rig people into office, only for them to run into the crowd of the masses and start pointing accusing fingers at their hitherto co-travelers, shamelessly pretending to be working for our interests. In my opinion, those kinds of political leaders are hypocrites and enemies of the people. In closing, I leave us with a Nigerian street parlance that says, quote and unquote, our mumu suppose don't do. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to the next episode coming up next Sunday. And meanwhile, you can listen or download my podcast, Reflections with Baba Yusuf, on Spotify podcast, Apple Podcasts, as well as my YouTube channel at Reflections_BY. You can also follow me and my engagements on other social media platforms. Until then, it's bye for now.